The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into Students of the Game. My name is Alex Baumann, and joined by my co-host, Nathan Glidewell. We're going to hop right into AAA today. It's college football related, so it's going to start out with that, then hop right into what happened this past weekend. So the first story for AAA is the Big Ten has suspended Michigan head football coach Jim Harbaugh for the remainder of the regular season as the conference disciplined the program under a sportsmanship policy amid the ongoing NCAA investigation into the school's in-person sign-stealing ring with Connor Stalions at the head of that. Nathan, do you agree with Harbaugh getting the suspension without, the Big Ten and the NCAA not really finalizing the investigation as of yet?
Yeah, that's one thing I went back and forth on because it's not finalized. They're just now getting through it. I mean, we don't know how much more there is to uncover and overall who is actually responsible because, I mean, honestly, I don't believe that Connor Stalions is the main person behind it all. I believe that Jim Harbaugh had some knowledge of it, if not all the knowledge of it, and he might have been the one who coordinated it and left Stalions to be the scapegoat and all of this. But what it comes down to is the amount of pressure the Big Ten has faced from the teams within the conference and college football as a whole to punish Michigan in some type of way because it is obvious that they've had an unfair advantage for the past 2 years, you could say. I don't know how long this has been going on for. No one really knows. But you don't know how many points it's worth. I mean, coaches have said double digits. Some have said it's a little closer. But in some shape or form, it has provided some sort of advantage for Michigan. And I believe that they need to be punished for that. I think they need to be punished more as a university other than just Jim Harbaugh as a head coach being suspended. And it sucks for the players because I don't think the players should be having to deal with this at all. But at the end of the day, Michigan as a university, the way that they have conducted this, I think has been poor. And the way that they're going back and forth with the Big Ten has looked kind of poor itself. At the end of the day, I don't think that there should have been a ruling on the suspension of Jim Harbaugh at this point in time, especially with 3 games left in the season. I get what all has gone on. But with the 3 big games left, they just had to play Penn State this past weekend. They play Maryland this upcoming weekend. Then after that, they got the game with Ohio State. Very, very huge games. And with Jim Harbaugh being suspended for those games, if Michigan drops one of those games, what are they going to say? So I didn't really agree with it at this point in time, but I get why they did it.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't agree with him suspending him at this point because the investigation is not complete and there's really nothing that proves that Jim Harbaugh knew what was going on as of yet. Not saying he didn't know it, but there's no proof. There's been no release of the documents or anything of that sort. So I really don't think the Big Ten should have suspended him as of yet. They're kind of jumping the gun here. For Michigan, I think their injunction to get the suspension, kind of appealed and let him coach his last 2 games of this regular season will most likely get accepted by the court just because the Big Ten, as of this point, has not released any evidence, like we both said. So I expect Jim Harbaugh to be in the sidelines, if not this weekend, probably the Ohio State weekend at the latest. And if they were to win that game and kind of win out and win their conference, then we'll see Jim Harbaugh hopefully in the college football playoff if that all works out. But like we both said, at this point, there's not enough evidence out here to warrant suspending Jim Harbaugh or doing anything of the sort to the Michigan program. And I hope that they get this evidence released to the public and everything is figured out sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
The next story, Texas A&M has fired head football coach Jimbo Fisher after nearly 6 years at the helm. The move is expected to cost the school more than $76 million due to Fisher's buyout. So they're basically paying Jimbo Fisher more to leave the school than they paid him to actually coach the school in his entire tenure. I believe his entire coaching tenure, his total salary was like $40-something million, and he's getting paid $76 million to leave. Nathan, what are your thoughts on Texas A&M finally biting the bullet here with his buyout and getting rid of Jimbo?
Yeah, well, this actually makes it the most expensive buyout in history. Previous one was owned by Gus Malzahn at Auburn for $21 million. So definitely a huge step up, being $76 million, which one of the cheapest contracts Texas A&M has ever given a coach. I don't think Jimbo Fisher was even worth close to that type of money. Obviously did not prove it when he coached at Texas A&M. What it came down to, pressure from the university. You look at what Kevin Sumlin did previous years in his previous tenure against the same competition. And it was about the same results. And of course, Kevin Sumlin made much less money compared to what Jimbo Fisher has made. When it came down to time to win big games, Jimbo Fisher really didn't bring it. He had one win versus Alabama, and other than that, not a lot. And it's kind of pitiful the way he ran the team, the amount of talent that is on that team, the facilities at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a prestige job, prestige university who has basically all the makings of a championship caliber team, except the fact that their coaches could not get it done. And it starts with Jimbo Fisher. They brought in Bobby Petrino for the offensive coordinator position this offseason. That has not worked out great, in my opinion. It was kind of the last straw thing because Bobby Petrino brings a good amount of baggage with him. And honestly, I think what it came down to was Jimbo Fisher said, this will help me win games, and it hasn't. I get the amount of injuries they've had on the team. Talk about the quarterback position. Connor Wegman, he is out. Matt Johnson went out. So I get that. But at the end of the day, with all the talent on the team, there was no excuse for Texas A&M to be where they are in the SEC. They should have been competing every single year to win the West, if not winning the West, and competing to win the SEC with that amount of talent. And Jimbo Fisher did not get it done. And this is quickly going to become one of the best races to see who can be the head coach at Texas A&M and how much money they're going to offer him. Because I really think it's going to reset the whole landscape of college football and what other teams do when it comes to paying coaches to come and work and to take over a team. Because $76 million, that's never going to have it on contract again. I hope so. And if it does happen, then it's going to be Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and whoever can win at least a national championship.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be like the Bobby Bonilla contract that the Mets had to pay to him like every year. It's like Bobby Bonilla Day, where it's just like, I think like $1 million. And with Jimbo, it's going to be, they had to pay him $7.2 million annually through 2031. So, I mean, he's set for life. He doesn't have to coach it ever again if he doesn't want to, even though I think Jimbo will probably end up somewhere, whether it's a lower Division I school or something, or an
Alabama analyst.
I don't know. Him and Nick Saban seem to be at odds as of right now. I don't know if that's gonna work out well. I don't know where he ends up, if he ends up anywhere. But you have to remember the reason he had that big buyout and that big contract was because when Ed Orgeron got the boot, LSU was trying to lure Fisher away from A&M, and they were really close to it. And then A&M said, "No, Jimbo, we'll give you this contract. You'll have this big old buyout. You're here for life," and all this jazz. And then Jimbo absolutely craps the bed, and Texas A&M is never the same. I know they recruit well, but when you recruit well, you have to actually coach the recruits good on the field, and he hasn't done that as of yet. And he's not going to get his chance to because he's had way too many chances to prove that he can be a good coach.
6 long years.
It's depressing. I don't know how he goes from Florida State and then comes here, and it's just no good. I feel bad for Texas A&M fans, but when you give him a blank championship trophy, when he got hired, it said 20-something, and it had a blank date. I mean, you're just asking for disappointment, and that's what they got. Nathan, if you're looking at the landscape of head coaches that A&M could hire, I know Mike Elko, the Duke head coach, who used to be the defensive coordinator for Jimbo Fisher, has been the most prominent name, but you also got Jeff Traylor, the head coach at UTSA. He's been doing great things there, even though they're not having the greatest of seasons as of right now. I know a guy like Deion Sanders has been getting a lot of traction. I'm not sure how realistic that is, considering what he's been doing in Colorado. I'm not sure he's going to want to leave so soon. I know Urban Meyer has also been a name that's come up. I think that would be a little bit more realistic than somebody like Deion Sanders. But who do you think is the favorite to get this job, in your opinion, Nathan?
Yeah, I've also heard Dan Lanning, but that is just so out there that there's no way he would leave Oregon. I think as of right now, Mike Elko might be in the running just because of his relation to Jimbo Fisher. And I think you look at the job he's done with Duke this previous year, I think it would bode well as a good hire for Texas A&M. But you look outside the program, a team that's not done great this previous year is Baylor, but I believe Dave Aranda has a good mindset as a head coach. I just don't think he's had the talent to do it at Baylor, which it has not been helpful. But maybe given the right opportunity, he could do something with it. I'll throw this in the dark here. Matt Campbell, what he's done at Iowa State, it hasn't been great some years.
I know they're contending for the Big 12
they're contending
championship.
for the Big 12 championship as of right now. I like the way he coached Brock Purdy and kind of handled that situation. So maybe giving him a shot wouldn't be like the biggest issue. I think obviously any coach they go after, they're not going to give a super big contract. They don't got I don't think they want to give a lot of money out anymore because they're going to be paying a lot of money here for Jimbo Fisher. But any of those names, I'd say Mike Elko, as of right now, is the most probable. But honestly, they could go after anyone. It's a wide open search.
Yeah, if I'm Mike Elko, I'm not sure I want to go to A&M because at Duke, I mean, they worship the ground that dude walks on. He's continuing to build that program up. And if you go to A&M, I mean, you see what happened to Jimbo. It's easy to, if you don't beat Alabama, it's kind of like Auburn's job almost. If you don't beat Alabama, you don't beat LSU, and with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, if you don't beat those guys, I mean, you could be 2 years into that job and be out the door. And while at Duke, Mike Elko might be there for a long, long time because their standard is not as high as A&M standard. I mean, Duke will be happy to win 9-10 games in a season. A&M, they want a championship every year. So if I'm Mike Elko, I'm not sure I really want to go to A&M at this point. I think somebody to look out for is maybe the Kansas head coach, Lance Leipold. He was mentioned in a lot of jobs last offseason, and I think he's done a great job building up Kansas. But once again, Lance Leipold, they're in Kansas. They worship the ground he walks on. I'm not sure if he wants. Leave? Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with all these coaches. It's kind of like Auburn was last year. Do you want to go to Auburn? Because, I mean, you don't beat Alabama and Nick Saban at least once. And two-year period, you're basically out the door. People hate you. I mean, you're Brian Harsin 2.0. So I think A&M's going to have a tougher job looking for somebody to take this head coach opening than many people expect because of the prestige around it and what they expect. All right, final AAA story, another firing around the SEC. Mississippi State has fired head football coach Zach Arnett after one season. Worth noting, Arnett was promoted to head coach last December after the sudden death of Mike Leach. Nathan, do you agree with Mississippi State just getting rid of Arnett so soon after only one season? Not even one season.
Yeah, not even one season. Like the situation all around sucks. I mean, losing Mike Leach was unexpected and horrible. And Zach Arnett having to be in that position after that, huge shoes to fill, and he obviously wasn't ready for it. I really feel bad for him because Mississippi State is not a pristine place to coach. The amount of talent is there. It's a good amount, but it's not the Alabamas, it's not the LSU's, it's not the Texas A&M's, it's not the Auburn's. You got to keep going down a long list of SEC teams before you even get to the amount of talent that Mississippi State brings in. So that already is just a leg down, and you're trying to compete. You look at the schedule the Bulldogs played this season. This is not easy. And I get that he wasn't competitive in all the games with Mississippi State, especially after this past weekend with the 51-10 loss to Texas A&M. That's pathetic. That should never happen. And it goes to show that Zach Arnett is not ready at this point in time to be a head coach. And I think this is probably the worst opportunity for him to be introduced into the head coaching position. And it's going to tarnish his reputation as a head coach. You look at that, his resume now, you're going to say, well, Mississippi State went at this point in time 4-6, and that's Zach Arnett coaching the team. But with all these outside factors, I think that he wasn't really given a fair chance. But I do understand why Mississippi State is letting him go. They need to move on and find a head coach with a little bit of experience. I don't know at this point in time who they'd go after. Who would you lure to come coach at Mississippi State? It's a difficult school to kind of lure people in to come coach. You think back to Dan Mullen and what he's done there. with the amount of talent they had. And ever since then, it's kind of fallen off. So where do you go from here? It's going to be a big question, but it was obvious that Zach Arnett was not the answer.
I always kind of thought Arnett was sort of like a band-aid on the program and sort of like a continuation of the Mike Leach sort of mentality there, trying to keep that program intact while that sudden death of Mike Leach, which is very sad. And that kind of program kind of rallied around that and rallied around Arnett when they won that bowl game that in the same offseason where Leach suddenly passed away. But this season, it was kind of like a waiting game of Zach Arnett really wasn't getting things done. And I was sitting here like, I'm just waiting to see when Arnett's going to get fired. Because like you said, Nathan, it was just a bad position for him to get put in. He really wasn't ready. And it just didn't turn out well. But I think he's a great defensive mind. I think he'll find a spot on any staff around the country he wants to, whether that's at the coordinator position or it's in a positional position, coaching those guys. But I think he's a great mind. He's got a bright future in coaching. And while this might tarnish his reputation a little bit as a head coach, I don't think it will as a coordinator whatsoever. If you're looking at candidates, Nathan, what's the first person that comes to mind from Mississippi State, considering it's not really the upper echelon program where you're gonna get a guy like Urban Meyer or something to come in there and coach for you?
You think that they'd have Dan Mullen back? No, that's a horrible joke. It's difficult. I look at a list of names. I honestly couldn't flip a coin and tell you who would even be considered. Maybe Jamie Chadwell at Liberty. But I don't know if he want to leave that situation. I mean, they're undefeated right now. And honestly, I think he might say, hey, look what I'm doing here at Liberty. I can come and go to, I don't know, a bigger university other than Mississippi State and do that. So it's very hard for a university like Mississippi State to lure anyone in to be a head coach. But I'm sure they're going to be able to find someone. It's just not going to be as big as a name as people think. And they're going to have to be patient with whoever it is.
I think for me, you might want to look at Ole Miss offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss Jr. I mean, he's in the state of Mississippi already.
Lord,
you see what the Ole Miss
they're
offense
not
does.
going to do that. They are not going to do that.
I don't know. I mean,
There's no
it's a possibility. Maybe Jeff Levy. He worked under Lane Kiffin as well. I mean, like you said, Nathan, they're not going to get some high profile coaching. They're not going to get. I doubt they get Jamie Chadwell. I don't think he leaves Liberty to go there. Another guy that might be in a lot of head coaching circles candidacy wise is James Madison, head coach. I believe his last name is Cignetti. Kurt Cignetti is how you pronounce it. I may be doing that.
Maybe.
But I mean, he's got James Madison undefeated. They were really good last year. I don't think he takes the Mississippi State job. He's offered it because James Madison is such a media darling right now and going to Mississippi State. He can definitely wait a little bit longer and end up somewhere else. He has a connection to Nick Saban, so you never know with him. One more thing to note before we move on to what happened this past weekend is Boise State fired their head football coach, Andy Avalos. So maybe Brian Harsin heads back to Boise State as the head coach. Nathan,
does anyone know of Brian Harsin's location as of right now?
He's actually on a plane to Boise State University. He's actually interviewing for the job right now.
Yeah,
he's going to coach
somewhere in Idaho is his location.
Find my iPhone. Where is Brian Harsin?
Find my Harsin.
Find my Harsin. Oh Lord, had that for Auburn fans back in the day. Find Brian Harsin. That probably would not have been a good thing for Brian Harsin, but
no, definitely not.
Let's move on. Number 8, Alabama taking on Kentucky this past weekend. Bama ended up winning that game 49-21 and clinched a spot in the SEC championship to play the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart. Nathan, what did you see from this game from Jalen Milroe and the defense that really showed you they're ready to take on somebody like Georgia?
The tide's been rolling, Alex, ever since week 2 against Texas. When the season looked all but lost, they've kind of managed to turn things around. And coming off the LSU win, a lot of people cited this as a trap game. 11 a.m. kickoff Central Time, coming off a big win versus LSU, a game where it can kind of catch you off guard. Kentucky's one of the teams where if you're not prepared well, then they can sneak up on you. But in this game, Alabama immediately comes out in the first quarter and just lays it to Kentucky. It was a 21-0 start for the Tide. Jalen Milroe was able to make some big throws on the stretch. And then Alabama's defense with that fumble recovery inside the red zone to set up the Tide's third touchdown of the day. what Jalen Milroe has been able to do at the quarterback position, miles different than what he did at the beginning of the season. I mean, this dude looks like a Heisman contender the way he plays the position now, making huge throws as well as using his legs. He had 6 total touchdowns on the day, 3 passing and 3 rushing, was actually sets an Alabama football record for total touchdowns. I mean, not total touchdowns. Tua is the only other quarterback to do that, as far as my knowledge. But for 3 passing and rushing touchdowns, definitely a historic mark for Jalen Milroe. Did have 1 interception on the day. It wasn't great, but
it was pretty ugly.
It was pretty ugly, throwing it back across the body, trying to make a play.
Out of bounds.
And Nick Saban talked about that, but Jalen Milroe just looks a lot more poised. He's been playing with a lot of confidence. I mean, up until this point, he goes out there, he smiles. He's having a good time. Talk about the rest of the Crimson Tide offense. They were without Jermaine Burton this game. He was sick. I believe that Ja'Cory Brooks is also out dealing with an injury shoulder injury from the past game versus LSU. So you had guys like Kobe Prentice step up. Jalen Hale, he is playing as well, and then Amari Niblack gets his touchdown. So you have guys who make multiple catches. I mean, look at the number of people who got receptions with the Tide this game. It's all over the place, spreading the ball around. And Jalen Milroe has just managed to find the open receiver. The running game didn't run the ball a lot. I mean, didn't have to most of the time because your offense wasn't on the field because they already had scored in like 4 or 5 plays in a drive. But Jason McClellan ran with a lot of energy. 9 carries, 43 yards. Justice Hayes came in 6 carries, 33 yards. Roydell Williams 6 carries, 20 yards, as well as 2 receptions, 30 yards, and a touchdown. That one play by Jalen Milroe with the touchdown he threw to Roydell, just making that play. That's something that Jalen Milroe in the past probably would have ran it, tucked in, ran it, but he's now starting to keep his eyes downfield, make those plays. It's just been different. Of course, the Alabama defense all over the place. There's not a lot you can say anymore. It's just expected for this Alabama defense to be dominant, and they were in this game. 21 points. It might seem like a lot. You got to take one of those away because Kentucky got a free touchdown when they had fumbled the ball at the previous play. Clearly recovered by Alabama, and the refs just didn't look at it because it was like garbage time. So I think you take that away, and then Colin McKinstry fumbled punt return. That
take him off. Take him off on returning.
Yeah, he has struggled with it, and I think Kendrick Law needs to be back there. I think that's going to be the much better option. I like Kool-Aid, but
he tries to do too much.
He tries to do too much, and he kind of panics back there. So that get to them 7. So realistically, I'd say probably 49-7 is a more likely score, but you can talk about logistics later on. Kentucky in this game, I really expected them to run the ball more, but when Alabama's defensive line is just that incredible. I mean, Ray Davis held to 26 yards in this game on 12 carries. That's incredible. And I know Ramon Jefferson, he had the big run today. I forget how long it was, but it was basically the length of the field. He got down to like the 1. Other than that, the running defense for Alabama, incredible. I've not been more impressed with the offensive line all week long. Secondary continues to make plays. Devin Leary, 17-31, 158 yards in that 1 touchdown. Also threw the interception. Terrion Arnold jumped that route, got a huge athletic pick. Been super impressed with him. But Kentucky in this game couldn't do anything. The offense was nowhere. I believe by the end of the first quarter, they had like -5 yards. Alabama's 100. And that basically spells out dominance in and of itself. You had Kentucky fans leaving in the third quarter. I mean, by the end in the third quarter, the stadium's basically empty besides the Alabama fans that were on cheering on the Tide. And now they move on. We got 2 more games. You got Chattanooga coming up for the Tide, and then, of course, the Iron Bowl after Thanksgiving. And then you'll have the SEC championship. But you can't look ahead. You got to take it 1 week at a time because at this point in time, you can't afford to slip up. And that they versus Auburn there is it's looking pretty tricky.
Yeah, you talk about Alabama here. I think the one thing that you really didn't point out, Nathan, was the offensive line for Bama and the
Oh,
blocking by the
I
running
didn't
backs.
even get to that.
I
See,
mean,
it's a
no
good thing
sacks.
I didn't say
Yeah,
anything.
no sacks allowed for the first time this season. Entering that game had allowed an SEC worst 37. And I know you're going against Kentucky, who isn't the greatest on defense, but to allow no sacks, considering the performance the offensive line has had all season, is pretty good. There was a couple breakdowns in blocking when it came to protecting Jalen Milroe, but Milroe was able to keep his eyes downfield and read the defense pretty well. Where in the past he might have taken the sack or tried to scramble and sort of got nervous and flustered in the pocket, where now he seems a lot more comfortable. And like I said, he's reading the defenses and he's either rushing or he's kind of like the Roydell Williams pass, dumping it to Roydell and going for a touchdown. So I think it's not only the credit to the offensive line doing well and the running backs blocking well, but it's also credit to Jalen Milroe and his progression as a passer and reading the defenses. It's got so much better. And the last thing for Bama is the injuries. Nathan kind of mentioned Burton and Ja'Cory Brooks being out this game. You also had Deontay Lawson with an ankle injury, Jalen Key with a quad injury, both out as well. Bama's got to get healthy. I expect everybody that was out this game to play in the Auburn game because you got Chattanooga, and if they don't have to play, they won't play. Even though you don't want to fall into that trap game in Chattanooga, even though I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. But you got to get these guys healthy going into Auburn, and you just got to remain healthy, especially outside of the Auburn game if you go face Georgia as well.
We'll get to that point later on.
Yeah, but staying healthy is a big thing for Alabama right now.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the Auburn Tigers taking on Arkansas. Auburn ended up winning that game 48-10. It was even close from the jump. I believe Auburn got out to a 21-0 lead. And after that, I mean, you can pack it up, Skittle squad, Arkansas. I don't know what they were doing. It's like Danny Knows is back on the sideline or something. But with that win, Auburn is now bowl eligible. Nathan, what do you see from Auburn that kind of scares you going into the Iron Bowl now, especially the way their defense really got after KJ Jefferson as a mobile quarterback? And then where does Arkansas go from here? Are you expecting a Sam Pittman announcement that he's fired, or what's going on?
Yeah, first of all, I wouldn't say Auburn really scares me. Because you can't afford to be scared by a team. In this day and age. But I will give it to Auburn. They're now bowl eligible. They weren't able to do that last season. So new milestone a lot for Hugh Freeze. I know it's not been a pretty season, but bowl eligibility is something to celebrate. So Birmingham bowl bound, maybe. I don't know. 48-10. I think I'll start with Arkansas first because at this point in time, you gotta go away from Sam Pittman. I mean, you already got rid of Dan Enos. He was a huge problem, but he wasn't the whole problem because you're still having the same issue where the same personnel comes out in the field. That's not bought for KJ Jefferson. He's running for his life half the time, and he has no time to do anything. The amount of people who are capable of being a playmaker for KJ Jefferson equals the same amount as zero. Rocket Sanders came back in the game. Eight carries for 0 yards and fumble lost. Had receptions for 3 yards, but wow, this Arkansas offense really just started to get dangerous. It's awful. This whole team's awful.
Dumpster fire.
I wanted to see some improvement from Arkansas, and before the season even started, there were a lot of Arkansas fans out there saying we're going to be so improved this season. KJ Jefferson's a top 3 quarterback in the SEC. He might be the best quarterback in the SEC. Look at the amount of people on the offense that are just capable of making plays. Look at our defense. Look at this. Look at that. Look at how terrible y'all have done this season. Awful, absolutely awful. Your head coach is about to lose his job. Your offensive coordinator is already out the door on that's playing to Tahiti. So I don't know what Arkansas fans are thinking now. Basketball season, maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't even turn that on because Arkansas is just going to blow another lead to Alabama or something. They'll figure out some way to lose and be
already getting started with basketball.
Yeah, we haven't even started talking about basketball yet, and I'm already on it. But Arkansas, pitiful. Go ahead and pack it up. That season, I wouldn't expect a whole lot either. The season after that, I wouldn't expect a whole lot. But just don't even expect anything else from the Razorbacks the rest of the time they play football because it's been a dumpster fire. Now, getting on to Auburn, their offense continues to improve. I mean, this is the point of the season where you need to start improving rapidly, going towards the Alabama game, that Iron Bowl. This is when it really matters for your fans. And they were pleasantly surprised by Peyton Thorne and his ability in this game. 12 of 20, 163 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Did have an interception. I didn't like to see that. He's got to improve a little bit on that. But he also had 12 carries, 88 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. He continues to improve. I don't know where he was all season playing like this. It's like he went from the Georgia game playing like this, and then bye week, LSU game, where was he at? Did he get off the bus? We don't know. And now suddenly he just reappeared. I don't know. Robbie Ashford, he came in the game, threw one pass, it got picked off. You just need to stick with the one quarterback system. It's obviously
I think that game they had basically put in the backups and Robbie Ashford.
But still, you need to go to a one quarterback system and stay that way. Just don't even try it. The running backs for Auburn, Jarquez Hunter, 16 carries, 109 yards. That is absolutely fantastic. Damari Alston comes in, 12 carries, 64 yards on the ground. I mean, both of them took care of business. Brian Batiste, 7 carries, 42 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. I mean, this running back by Kinmini has continued to work out well. I think it helps with the stamina and the pace that Auburn plays at, because they rely a ton on the running game at this point in time. But it's been nice because they're being able to balance offense finally. I think being able to run the ball and then having the threat of actually passing the ball instead of past weeks where everyone just keeps on the run and stacks the box. It's been miles different. Darius Johnson, 3 receptions, 53 yards and a touchdown. Rivaldo Fairweather, 3 receptions, 20 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, you just got to get your playmakers involved, and they got to finally catch the ball, and they did this week. And
I don't know. I don't know.
Camden
Brown might have no hands the way he catches the football. I mean,
there were still
last week
problems,
was awful,
but it was improvement, is what I'm trying to say. He put up 48 points.
Not from Camden Brown. Not from Camden Brown. He's just like, he's just like on a straight line of crap.
But they did score 48 points. I didn't know Auburn was capable of that. So you got to give their offense a lot of credit. And of course, their defense comes out. They're great. I mean, they take care of business. 2 fumble recoveries. I mean, what more could you ask for? 5 sacks, 8 tackles for losses, 5 passes defended. I mean, I have not much more to say about this Auburn defense, and they've been spectacular all season long. And if their offense would have caught up after the bye week, then we're talking about a totally different record for the Tigers. Maybe they're in contention for a better bowl. But with what has gone on this past week, you're looking ahead. I mean, you got New Mexico State, and then you got the Iron Bowl. But obviously, everyone's looking towards the Iron Bowl and what this Auburn team can do against Alabama. I don't know. I don't know what's going to measure up to. The Iron Bowl is always different. You throw up all records, everything. I don't know if Auburn's offense can keep performing like this against the defense that Alabama has. It's going to be hard. But you do have home field advantage. We'll get to that point in a little bit, I guess. But as of right now, great win for Auburn in Arkansas. No words.
I think the one thing for Auburn fans that makes them a little bit less concerned about the Iron Bowl is the way they defended KJ Jefferson this game. I know Jefferson and Milroe run the ball 2 different ways.
Don't even compare them.
Jefferson's more of a Cam Newton, Josh Allen. He's going to be a bruiser type quarterback when he runs the football. Milroe's more of like a Lamar Jackson, elusive type rusher of the football. But they defended KJ Jefferson very well this game. They broke down, and I know, once again, Arkansas's offensive line, not even remotely close to Alabama's, but they really got after Jefferson, really broke down that pocket much more than they have all season against any team. They got 5 sacks, 8 TFLs. Jalen McLeod was all over the place. Eugene Asante, Marcus Harris. And those guys were in that backfield, it felt like almost every play. So if you're an Auburn fan, that little bit of a lesser concern if you're trying to contain a guy like Jalen Milroe, even though I think they probably still will struggle to. But it gives them a little bit of hope going into the Iron Bowl. UAB takes on Navy, loses 31-6, and for the first time since 2014, UAB will not be playing in a bowl game. Feels like I've never experienced in my lifetime UAB not going to a bowl game. I mean, Bill Clark, that 2014 season was the first year under Bill Clark, and they were bowl eligible. They just didn't get invited to a bowl game, and they didn't get to a bowl game in 2020, but they were actually bowl eligible once again. It was just the COVID season and all that stuff. So and this is the first time, 2014, haven't got to a bowl game, and the first losing season since 2013. I know Trent Dilfer, it's his first year, it's a rebuilding year, but I mean, you got to start doing something here, UAB. Your fans are not going to be very pleased with you. But I think Trent Dilfer can figure it out. It's just a rough season.
Jacob Geno continues to be just bipolar. He'll come off the
Yes,
greatest game
yes.
of all time, and then he comes out in this game and throws 2 picks. I don't understand.
Yeah, and the difference between the old UAB teams and this one is they like to pass the ball more, and we don't run the ball worth a crap. Before that, I mean, UAB was like run it down your throats and pass it when they needed to. It's like the opposite now. And if it works out, it works out. But as of right now, it really hasn't worked out for this team. Maybe we see a switch back to the old style, but I don't know what Trent Dilfer and Alex Mortensen are thinking with this team going into the future. Jacksonville State was on bye, and they'll play La Tech this weekend, so nothing to report from Jacksonville State's end. And then probably the most important game from this past weekend, number 3, Michigan taking on number 10, Penn State. Michigan ended up winning that game 24-15. Nathan, James Franklin went ahead and fired offensive coordinator Mike Urich after this performance, and then you had the Ohio State performance where the offense scored 12 points. Both games, Drew Allar looking at the quarterback. Yeah, I don't know what was going on. At the end of the game, Penn State scored a touchdown, and then instead of kicking the field goal and trying to do an onside kicker, trying to get the ball back and just go for 2 at the end of the game, he just went for it there, and then that was effectively the end of the game. Does James Franklin need to be on the hot seat? He's undefeated in the last 2 seasons against everybody but Ohio State and Michigan. But when he plays Ohio State and Michigan, he hasn't beat them once in the past 2 years. So should he be on the hot seat?
You got to go and think to the point, at what point do you expect more from James Franklin? Because it has been, for the past few years now, that the level of success Penn State fans want is we want to just be able to compete against Ohio State and Michigan. And if we're undefeated against everyone else, that's all right. And that's what they've gotten from James Franklin consistently. But now they're starting to get more of a taste for blood and say, we want to beat Ohio State and Michigan. And James Franklin's like, hold up, this is not the deal we signed here. And James Franklin, given the amount of talent they have on the roster, they measure up to Ohio State and Michigan. But it comes down to, I really think it's a similar situation to what Jimbo Fisher had at Texas A&M. But we're not going to talk about James Franklin like that because of what he did at Vanderbilt in the previous games and seasons. But it's really starting to look like that. You go and fire your offensive coordinator. I don't think it's completely his fault. I think James Franklin, when it comes down to, you make stupid decisions and you put yourself in poor scenarios and you don't put yourself in positions to win these type of games, forget it. Michigan didn't even pass the ball in the second half. I mean, for God's sakes, man, do something. Change out personnel. Drew Allar at quarterback, awful. Absolutely awful. I mean, you have a good offensive line.
I don't know. In Drew Allar's defense, he has like no weapons. Yeah, none.
I will say that. He does not have any weapons.
Outside of the running backs.
But when he can't throw an accurate pass or when he can't get into a rhythm, at some point you got to make a personnel change. You got to throw someone in to kind of throw off the funk. But James Franklin did not do that. The amount of stupid decisions he made in this game, like going for 2 after their first touchdown, put them in a hole, and then you go and score really quick in the fourth, and then you go for 2, even though if you kick the field goal, it was still a 1-possession game. That's the type of stuff that people do in Madden, and they're not very good at Madden. So that tells you how good of a head coach James Franklin is. You threw the game away right there, but what it comes down to, your defense could not stop it. I mean, Michigan literally said, here is our play. This is what we're running. They ran it, and Penn State said, what? What are they doing? I don't know what they're doing. Wait, they're running the ball? I didn't see that coming. They ran the ball the whole second half. It looked like an Army-Navy game out there. And Penn State could not stop it. I don't get it. I really don't get it. J.J. McCarthy threw 8 passes in this game for 60 yards. Unbelievable. Makes Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards look like Heisman contenders yet again, because they did this last season. Atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. Penn State, I really thought this was the year they were going to compete against Ohio State and beat Ohio State and Michigan. I thought they were going to run the Big Ten. And yet, James Franklin tricked me again. I took the bait. I was on the hook. James Franklin, I'll give him one more year, and if he doesn't do anything again, he should be gone.
Look at Michigan. If Michigan was playing anybody else this game, they would have lost. I'm sorry, the offense wasn't great. The defense, if Drew Lohr was a confident quarterback, they would have got destroyed. So without Jim Harbaugh on the sideline, this team looks absolutely lost. They got to get something figured out. I don't think Ohio State's much better. I think they're a little bit of the same kind of boat with Michigan. I think if either Ohio State or Michigan were to play Georgia or Alabama at this point, I don't think the game would be close. I really don't. And it might be stupid for me to say as of right now, but the way Michigan and Ohio State have played all season, I really haven't seen much improvement, and I really do think Alabama or Georgia would run all over them and destroy them. Nathan, do you agree with that sentiment?
I'm not going to make a comment at this time.
You're not going to make a comment?
Nope.
All right, just some upsets from the past weekend. Number 13, Tennessee, end up losing to number 14, Missouri, 36-7. Missouri quarterback or running back Cody Schrader, 35 carries, 205 yards, 1 touchdown. Then had 116 yards receiving and outgained Tennessee by himself. I have no words for Josh Heupel, Bobby from King of the Hill, dude. I have nothing for you. I have nothing for you. Number 15, Oklahoma State lost to UCF, 45-3. It feels like every year Oklahoma State, it's just like they start out the season a little bit rough. They do the mid part of the season really well, and they just lose to somebody they shouldn't lose to. And here it is. You lose to UCF, 45-3. And then the last upset was Texas Tech ended up beating number 16 Kansas 16-3. Kansas was on their third string quarterback. Jason Bean went down with an injury, so can't really blame Kansas for ending up losing this game with a third string quarterback who's a freshman in the game. Some other storylines: James Madison got to 10-0 after they beat UConn 44-6. James Madison quarterback Jordan McLeod 33-37, 457 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Nathan, they have to rank James Madison and give him to a bowl game. They are 10-0. There's no way they can't. The NCAA needs to fix that rule. Number 24, UNC escaped in double overtime against Duke, 47-45. After the Blue Devils quarterback Grayson Loftus failed to connect with wide receiver Jalen Calhoun in the back of the end zone. 39 combined points were scored in the fourth quarter. So not a lot of defense played there. A little bit surprising for Mike Elko, not surprising for North Carolina and Gene Chiswick. That defense has been awful since Mac Brown's gotten there. Number 2, Georgia demolished number 9, Ole Miss, 52-17, and clinched a spot in the SEC championship, as I mentioned earlier. Brock Bowers did return from injury, had 3 receptions, 34 yards, and a touchdown. This was the college game day. Like, this is where they went to, is the Ole Miss Georgia game, right? Yeah. And it wasn't even close from the start. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, he plays these big time opponents and craps his pants. Alabama, Georgia, there's no difference. He can't get it done.
It's like he keeps the game close early because it was 14-14 at one point. I thought this was going to be a very competitive game, and then it's like they remember that's Georgia and we're Ole Miss, and we're not supposed to be tied. We're not supposed to be in this game. So let's go ahead and let them score all the points while we sit here and do absolutely nothing, and that's what they did yet again.
Moving on, number 5, Washington held number 18 Utah scoreless in the second half to win 35-28 and stay unbeaten. Michael Penix Jr., 332 yards, 2 touchdowns, and added a rushing touchdown on top of that. Continues the seismic campaign, and Washington, like I said, remains unbeaten.
Escapes.
It escapes, but their defense did hold Utah to no points in the second half.
I don't know. I mean, you got to remember the conditions in this game. They were playing like 15-mile-per-hour winds. I mean, passing looked terrible. And watching this game, it was very, very competitive. It was very back and forth, and Utah had a lot of the momentum. I mean, they went to the half up, but there's one drive you think back to when Utah threw the interception, the dude took it all the way down. Was supposed to be a pick six, but he dropped it at the 1, and then Utah recovered, and then immediately after that got a safety. That just like killed all momentum Utah had. I think if Utah would have scored a touchdown in that series, the result might have been different. But you got to give credit to Washington because they continue to battle in these hard games and they continue to win. So I can't hold it against them.
USC has now lost 4 of their last 5 games as Bo Nix threw 412 yards and 4 touchdowns to give Oregon the win against the Trojans, 36-27. Lincoln Riley, his time at USC is just continuing to go downhill. I don't know what they're doing there up in Southern California, but I honestly don't know if Lincoln Riley lasts another 2 years there, if this is the product continues to put on the field, especially with them going to the Big Ten and the competition getting much better than what it is right now. You're not going to have the the Arizona States or stuff like that to, okay, this is like a semi, you don't have to worry about this game. And you're going to be playing Michigan, Ohio State and stuff like that. You're not going to have time to, we get a free win here. Number 7, Texas fended off another late comeback as they beat TCU 29-26. Worth noting, Longhorns running back Jonathan Brooks is out for the season with a torn ACL. Might come into play if we have that scenario where we have Oregon, Texas, and Alabama all with one loss, and they're all conference champions. And we've seen in the past where if players out, you're losing a key player, might come into play there and affect the committee's decision making when it comes to who the 2 in, who's the 1 out. Number 21, Arizona handed Colorado their 4th straight loss as Tyler Loop connected on a 24-yard field goal as time expired. Nathan, Colorado has to beat Washington State and Utah to reach bowl eligibility. Do they do it?
No, they're not going to do it. All the momentum they had at the beginning of the season has fizzled out. They got, look, you got to look at their schedule. They played a lot of tough opponents, but in games they should have won, they absolutely choked. You think back to the Stanford game, that's probably the game I'm going to mark down as this was the turning point in the season. Really up into that game, I know they had lost to USC, but they had everything in front of them. I think a lot of the momentum they had was still in front of them. They won that game. I think the season goes completely different. I think they're a lot more competitive in some of these games and maybe get a win out of a few of them. But since they want to just fool around, I think it took all the air out of the locker room. And this is definitely not like the season you want to see, but compared to what Colorado did last season, only 1 win, it's improvement technically. But you got to be able to finish in these games, and whenever you have number 21 Arizona on the ropes, you got to be able to finish, and they just weren't able to.
Yep. And the last thing before we head out of here, LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels cemented his Heisman candidacy against Florida. He threw for 372 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then rushed for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns. Daniels became the first quarterback in FBS history to have at least 350 passing yards and 200 rushing yards in a game. Nathan, it's the Heisman race, just Jayden Daniels and everybody else. I know LSU is not going to be contending for the college football playoff or anything, but I mean, the Heisman Trophy goes to the most outstanding player, not the most outstanding player on the best team in the country. And Jayden Daniels this season has been the most outstanding player, and I don't think there's much debate to it. But
I think there's a little debate. And I will say this.
Guys.
I will say Bo Nix has a strong case. He's been able to do. Other than the Washington game, I mean, they have obliterated opponents. I mean, Bo Nix is taking care of business. I mean, they're every single game he plays just puts up tremendous numbers. I think you got to look at him, especially with how the Pac-12 has done this season. It's been very competitive, but Oregon continued to just demolish people outside the one game at Washington. And honestly, I think if that game was replayed today, I think that would be different. So I think he is neck and neck, but Jayden Daniels definitely, puts up tremendous numbers. And with this game, I'd say he takes the lead in the race. I think after last week, I would have had Bo Nix by a little bit, but he definitely took the lead with this game. But what it's going to come down to is this last stretch of games, and just who plays better. Because I as much as I love Michael Penix, he has had so many games where he has struggled. You think back to the Arizona State game, that's the game that really took him out. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. just not having close to the type of season he needed to have if he wanted to win the award. And then outside of that, you just have no guys who come close. Honestly, you give me a list of people to put outside the top 5, I wouldn't know how to rank them. It's just that close. But as of right now, I think Jayden Daniels should win the Heisman. Yeah,
I'd have to agree. I think it's Jayden Daniels' race to lose. They got a couple games left on the schedule, the most notable one being A&M, and they don't have a head coach. So if he can run all over that
game is also at 11 a.m. Central Time. So there's not gonna be 74, 72, however many overtimes there was. Yeah, I think like 7, but there's none of that.
Yeah, I think it's Jayden Daniels and Bo Nix and Michael Penix. That's like a 3-person race, but I think Jayden Daniels and Bo Nix are the 2 guys that are going to be battling out until the last week of the season. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening and watching Student of the Game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.